So welcome to this Cambridge Marketing College webinar. This one is Demystifying Machine Learning for Marketers. So the demystifying machine learning is the key bit, but I'm going to give it a marketing spin because there are so many different ways that we know we can be using what we're calling AI, so artificial intelligence, and these machines and capable programs that are now defining the way that many of us are doing business. And so we're going to narrow this down into what this actually means within the marketing sphere and the marketing discipline. So by demystifying what we mean by machine learning, which is one of those phrases that's often kind of passed around with very little kind of true understanding of actually what it means. So we're going to do, hopefully, you'll find a jargon-free guide to the various different ways that machine learning manifests. So we're going to talk about supervised, unsupervised, and deep learning applications, because these are different kind of iterations, I guess you could say, for how machines are learning, teaching themselves, becoming more and more, I'm going to say it, human-like in their activities and the ways that they're supporting us. And so we're going to look at the differences between those different types of machine learning. We're going to show where machine learning is already showing up in marketing and enable you, even if you're not particularly technical, to be able to think and talk confidently about this new and emerging technology and space, really, that is redefining how marketing is playing out for us. So let's take a quick little backward step here and really define what is machine learning. So, in a very simple sense, machine learning is when computers learn from data to make decisions, to make predictions, or to automate tasks without needing, and this is the key bit, to be explicitly programmed every time. So most of the time, when we are using apps, when we're using websites, when we're using technology, platforms, tools, in a digital sense, these things have actually been coded. So they've been hard coded to behave and act in a certain way. So if you press this button, something happens. If you do this, then something else happens. And literally creating paths or journeys through the application so that you go from one place to another. Now, machine learning is very different because this is where the computer is actually learning every time based on its memory of what it's done before, that the interactions that it's had with you, and what it then uses there to predict future outcomes, give advice, give guidance, and interpret the things that it's learned. So this is true machine learning. So the machine is learning. That's the core really behind all of this. So an example in marketing could be a tool which learns which email subject lines get more opens, for example, then suggests better ones automatically. So it's looking maybe in that example for pattern recognition, not magic. So what it's doing is it is using the learning that it's had. In other words, it is kind of almost sort of judging and remembering its past experiences and saying, on balance, this is the most likely outcome in the future. So what I've seen, what I've read, what I've heard, what I've learned is leading me to think this is what I need to share with you, mere human. And that's kind of what's happening here. So, of course, the way that it's being set up is that it feels quite human. It feels very interactive. And particularly if the machine that you're encountering is giving you feedback that feels as though it's quite conversational. A lot of us now are using the voice activation within the AI tools that we are using. And of course, that feels very, very human. It kind of is a conversation that's very human-like. But at the core of this is machine learning. So all it is doing really is regurgitating its learning, it's things that it's experienced before, putting an interpretation on those in real time. So it's happening there as you're doing it. It hasn't been pre-programmed. There are no algorithms at play in the traditional sense that we've been used to. So you are getting something that's quite fresh, innovative, potentially quite new, but it is based on old stuff. So it's based on memory. So why does this matter? Why is it useful for us to understand how this stuff is playing out behind the scenes? Well, most AI-powered tools use machine learning. So if you're using any form of AI, it's very, very likely, almost certain, to be honest, that it is using machine learning. And this will help us to save our time, improve results, the hyper-personalization of experiences and customer journey, all the things that, I've talked about many, many times. And understanding machine learning will give you the confidence to ask better questions, to engage more effectively, to get it possibly even right first time when you're having a conversation with your AI. And also, importantly, to choose the right tools because each AI is operating and acting with its own inherent specialisms. So some are good for some things, some are good for other things. And that is really how those things have been used by humans to grow up and learn. So it's like having, say, two identical twins. You ship one off to one side of the planet, one to another side of the planet, so they have no contact, and you treat them differently. You put them into a different household so they develop differently, maybe give them different education, maybe feed them differently, and they will become relatively different. They'll still have familiarity. They'll still kind of maybe have certain traits that will be very typical of the other twin, but they will have different memories. They will have different experiences to draw from. So that's kind of what's going on here. So you don't need to code, you don't need to understand kind of what goes on behind the scenes to really get a grasp of the power of machine learning. But this will become really clear when we start to talk about prompting. Because, of course, the prompting bit is you enabling the machine learned tool, the AI that you're talking to draw from its vast bank of data and information, the things that it's learned, to interpret really what you want to get out of it. So there's a real kind of sense here that you can begin to get much better outcomes by just being aware of the different types of machine learning. In other words, how is the AI that I'm communicating with and prompting and working with as my assistant or as my agent, how has it learned what it's learned? Okay, so the first way that we can talk about this is through something called supervised learning. So this is the first element of machine learning. And this you could kind of talk about as teaching by example. So how this works is that you give the machine examples with correct answers, and it learns the pattern and applies it to new data. So for example, if you had a monthly report, and you fed in regular monthly reports. You're teaching it that this is how I like the monthly report to look and feel. Here's some of the base data upon which you're basing this from. And now look, here's this month's data. Produce me a monthly report. Well, a supervised learned machine is going to then regurgitate a similar output. It's going to give it to you in the same kind of template or dashboard, and it's going to show you then the trends of this month versus previous months that it's learned, because you've taught it by example. You taught it by example what it likes and also the base data. And so examples more broadly than that from a marketing perspective are, predicting which leads are likely to convert, email tools that suggest send times based on past opens, classifying sentiment as positive, neutral, or negative based on what it's already been taught and what it's learned. And it's kind of best for tasks where we know the outcome we want. That's important because it's not really very innovative. If you can imagine that example of the monthly report that I shared with you, it's not particularly pushing the boundaries, is it? It's kind of using the base data that's been taught to it by example. It knows the kind of framework. You're not asking it to produce a swanky new looking kind of dashboard or way of reporting. You're kind of looking for it to do something that's quite reliable, predictable, and kind of, because it's supervised learning, you should really have quite a bit of a high level of confidence that it's going to produce something that you could confidently take to a meeting or send to your boss. So supervised learning, teaching by example, is one way that we can do this. Another way that machines learn is through unsupervised learning. So how this works is you give the machine data with no labels or outcomes and just let it group similar things together or find patterns that you couldn't see because the data was complex, or there were many variables, or there were many possible correlations between the data sets. And so your unsupervised learning, machine learning AI, is going to be able there to spot hidden patterns. So this is kind of next level over and above supervised learning. So the kind of things that you might be looking for here from a marketing perspective are segmenting customers by behavior or interest. So you throw in a load of data about behavior that's happened or the interest that you've managed to gather through surveys or something like that, and you say to the AI, okay, can you see some patterns, please? I'm not going to tell you how I want this produced. I'm not going to give you any clues, but tell me if you see some commonality in the data here. Can you see that maybe there's a bias towards a certain type of person who maybe behaves in a certain way? And of course, this is more innovative because this is a little bit more blue sky for the AI to play with. So the machine learning, when it's unsupervised, will enable you to spot hidden stuff. You might discover clusters in social media trends, for example. You might identify some unusual patterns that you wouldn't have seen because they're hidden deep, deep, deep in the data. And again, as mere humans, and I often find myself saying this phrase, mere humans struggle to be able to accommodate that because our brain processing power only goes so far. Some of us who are very and some people say, well, I've got a photographic memory. I can, almost see something and then I can recall it, ad verbatim. But for most of us, we don't have that. Most of us will look at this and get just bogged down by the numbers. We won't see the wood from the trees. We will find it very hard to spot the hidden patterns. But machine learning through an unsupervised approach where you just give this freedom to the AI to give you some stuff back that you don't know and you can't see and allow it and enable it to do something unsupervised where you don't guide it or structure it can open up many, many new opportunities. So we're finding marketers are finding some really good, opportunities here for pushing the boundaries. And if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to develop, if you're looking to maybe do some new product or service development, unsupervised learning and the way to interact with your AI could actually benefit from this unsupervised way. And then the third way in our machine learning demystification is what we call deep learning. This is where you're really very likely to see some advanced patterns emerging. So how this works is this is a type of machine learning that use what we call neural networks. And these are inspired by the scientists who have done deep research in how the human brain works. And this is going to be detecting complex patterns, especially in images, in voice, and in language. Now, this is where, for those of us who are curious about behavioral science and how maybe the AIs are beginning to come a little bit more, I'll use the phrase again, a little bit more human in the way that they interact, it's this level of deep learning in machine learning that is starting to uncover the opportunities for, getting almost the best out of the human kind of psyche and the way that the humans are built to embed into AI. So examples within marketing are maybe visual recognition for some branded content, or maybe using it for user-generated content. So you're looking at maybe doing a survey across all social media to see if you can spot where your products or services are being used through image searches, for example, that AIs obviously can do. And they will uncover that maybe, things that you've never seen before. And if you were to do a manual search, I mean, where would you begin as a human? Whereas through this now new type of neural network inspired deep learning, your AI can go out and search imagery from across the web and find your product in situ, in context that you could never see. And that will open up very interesting, deep research opportunities for you to then say, we're seeing a pattern here that our product seems to appear here in rural situations, or it seems to appear here in a product setting in offices. We're seeing a lot more people using this product actually in an office because look, there's stuff that's been shared in social media and we can see our product in the background. Those kinds of things where you're going to be able to do deep research like never before. We're also seeing examples coming through here with voice assistants and voice search. So as I said right at the start of this, more and more of us are using the more kind of human style deep learning that comes through from this style of machine learning to create our agents who are going to be there as voice assistants in the front end of our website, or maybe as somebody comes through on a customer service call. Maybe we've got a voice assistant who knows inherently everything about all of our products and services, best practice, how to use them, all of the terms and conditions around, claims that the person might be looking to make against our, warranty that we might have, all of the things like that. The deep learning from a almost supercharged human who just knows everything about everything. Well, our AIs can do that if they're doing deep learning, machine learning. And we're seeing it as well in tools that write content. Again, your favorite tool is probably something you've used to create some really interesting and innovative content that is not coming as if by magic from anywhere sort of, ethereal. This is purely through deep learning. So when you say, please write in the style of, or please keep these brand guidelines in mind when you create this particular blog article, and so it does. It knows how you are thinking and your requirements, and it will base it on the feedback that you've given before, how it's kind of feeling on the day. Now, I'm going to use that phrase in a kind of a sort of like really nil kind of sense, but I'll come back to that, how it's feeling on the day, to then actually give you some outputs that may well surprise you. And often when we see some really, really quality content that's coming out of our AIs, it's because it's pushed the AI to the next level, and that's deep learning. And deep learning powers much of today's generative AI. And of course, a lot of that is coming through in content creation. Now, I said about how the AI is actually feeling today. But actually, the more you use it, the more you do get a sense that it does have good days and bad days. It does call on accurate data sources and less accurate data sources, even with the same prompt. So there's something inherently interesting happening here. I'm not going to base this on fear. I'm not going to judge this, but some days your AI needs a little bit more encouragement. Do I know what's going on when that happens? No, I don't. But this is the deep learning effect that's coming through. And it is using advanced pattern recognition. It is using its memory of the supervised and unsupervised learning it's done before, obviously those things that we've just covered, to give you its best attempt today. But this is why sometimes on some days you find you have to spend a little bit longer with the AI. You have to go a little bit deeper with the prompt. You have to be a little more kind and a little bit more instructive to the AI to go deeper to give you the output you need. So we are beginning to act as almost human to sort of AI human, or at least AI agent. And this is where that level comes into play. The other two levels is very functional. It's very programmatic. It's very, you know what you're going to get out to a certain extent. But within the deep learning, this is where machine learning comes into play with the human interaction. And so have a little think about that as you're actually interacting and prompting your AI going forward, and just notice the patterns here. Sometimes it's very predictable, those simple actions and tasks you're working with it on. And then when you get a little bit more complex, you will notice that this level cuts in. And of course, the race to the top with all the platforms is that they want to get here, because this is where AGI, general artificial intelligence, which is much more human in nature, is going to be stimulated from. And you're already seeing all of this machine learning playing out in marketing. You're probably already using it, even if you don't realize it. Obviously, things like ChatGPT and a lot of the other Copilot and the other platforms that we're using on a day-to-day basis, the obvious ones, because those are almost like the native AI platforms, but it's embedded everywhere. Meta or Google Ads targeting tools, email tools that optimize send time, for example, social listening platforms like Brandwatch. It's behind the scenes in most of these smart marketing platforms now. So be aware of it, almost welcome it in. If you see it there, think, oh, okay, well, let's see now whether this version, and a lot of them are still at beta because there's no playbook. We're still developing and evolving this as a human species. So nobody knows the final answer of where this is going. But if you keep your finger on the pulse, just by being aware that there's machine learning going on behind the scenes in all the tools and platforms you're using, you'll get a sense of the proliferation of this across everything that we in marketing are doing. And so it's important to know it's there and have a little play with those extra features and see whether or not right now that they're adding value. Some of them won't be adding too much value. Everybody's trying this and embedding this machine learning into their tools right now. Every single new version that you see of something, be it an app or a website or chatbot, it's coming out with this stuff. So when it does, and it is, have a little play. You now know that there are different levels that these machines, these AIs are working at. And so see if you can spot which level they've achieved so far as you go and do each one. And the benefit, if you do take this stuff seriously and really wake up to it and almost welcome it in, the benefit to you as a marketer is that it's going to save time through automation. You are going to do this improved personalization, not just one-to-one, but one-to-one at scale. That's really exciting. And you will spot the trends faster than any human competition. So if you're looking to break into a new market or gather, some market share from your competition, this is the way to do it right now. This is the way to supercharge, knowing that machine learning is happening around you in everything that you're doing, and then just embracing it and just helping it on its way. Because if it's helping you, the chances are it could be, but still might not be helping the competition. So get the things learning the way you want it, and then it's going to be skewed in your favor. I'm a huge believer of, actually helping this thing to drive it, because there are still untapped areas of machine learning that you can help to stimulate and drive, even as an individual. This is still very, very early in the game, so embrace it. You are going to see increased campaign performance with less guesswork if you do this. It is going to empower your decision making with data-driven evidence. We know that, if you just do the simple thing, which I mentioned before in your monthly report, of thinking, actually, let's just run this monthly report through AI and see if it can tell me what are the top 3 priorities to meet these specific SMART goals next month. What do you think, AI? What would you do from your knowledge, from your machine learning? What would you say I should do? And see if that matches with your ideas, and get into a conversation, debate it, stimulate it, see if it can come back with, well, okay, I agree with you there, Neil. Those are 2 good things, but you missed this one. Nobody's doing this one. Try this one too. You're going to gain some share. You're going to gain some new sales. You're going to be really overperforming as a marketer. And then that gives you something then to prioritize next month. It's exciting times. So machine learning in this way, if you can kind of embed this in with your AI understanding, it's going to support creative work, creative marketing, rather than replacing it. Obviously, the big, big fear there. So the questions to ask when using machine learning tools is, what data is the tool learning from? And actually ask it. You don't have to kind of, guess. You can actually ask it. Is it supervised or unsupervised? Get into the conversation there. The general rule of thumb is that when you're prompting an AI, whichever one you choose from, is that you begin by asking it, how can I brief you best? How can we develop this conversation and this relationship in the best possible way for the best and the most optimum outcome? And see whether or not it improves over time. Because it should, and it probably will. Because, of course, every conversation, every moment, every prompt, every correction enables it to learn. And so be polite, be courteous, be generous, be open, be authentic, transparent, and true with it, and it will reflect that back to you. As we've seen with unsupervised, supervised, or even deep research, it's looking to you for the guidance. It's looking to you to learn, because you are part of its memory banks. And of course, can you explain this stuff, this outcome? Can you explain this kind of principle, really, to a colleague or a customer? And always ask the question, is the use of how I'm using this ethical and transparent? Am I putting the right things in to get the right, authentic, and honest outputs? The best principles of just being a decent human being apply when you're using your AI tools, because they can only learn. It's almost like you're a good parent. You're parenting almost at this stage in the evolution of AI. It doesn't matter what your role is, you are parenting your AIs, and they will become assistants. They will probably, in certain things, become more specialist and more capable than you in the future. But what better way of doing this, that you're kind of almost seeing it as a bit of an offspring, if you like, that, you can coax and nurture and help and, bring to fruition in a way that is the right way of doing things, the really kind of wholesome business that you're looking to do in the future. So it's exciting. It's just a different way of looking at it because you are responsible for how these machines learn. But you do need, as part of doing that, to watch out for things like confirmation bias, because this is where we unintentionally look to data or for outputs that we support or will support, things we already believe, and then that we then almost kind of shy away from believing anything that's new. So this is a danger. It is a danger. It's an inherent danger of machine learning, is that what we're doing is we're reinforcing our existing beliefs. So we need, if we can, with best endeavors, to go into this with an open mind, being really honest, and try not to judge. If we see things coming through that are not supportive of what we've seen before, or that do challenge us, or that, rock us right to the core of our being, then we've got to stop and reflect. This is a wake-up call time. It really, truly is. And I find myself doing this a lot when I get an output and I think, hold on a minute, I'm the senior marketer in this relationship. AI, what are you doing? That's not right. And then I think, well, hold on. That's just me believing I'm true and I'm right. Maybe I got it wrong all these years. Maybe it wasn't actually true. So, AI, can we have a deeper conversation on this? Because I don't agree with you, but you might be right here. And so, using this to not reinforce old ideas, but challenge them, improve them. So maybe outputs should prompt us to ask why, not just say yes. Maybe this will encourage us to stay curious, challenge the results and the conversations we have with our AIs, and seek evidence from multiple angles. So I find myself now, just as a simple example, as a marketer, using one AI, my go-to is ChatGPT, and using that at a very deep level now in conversations, the relationships I'm building with it in terms of my professional work, but not relying on its final output and actually checking that final output, fact checking it, and actually saying to Perplexity as a sort of a backup tool, saying, Perplexity, I've just come up with this assumption or this plan or this kind of roadmap for this thing. Can you fact check it? Can you just double check that this is the best possible outcome for me? Because I don't want to see a bias in there. And so maybe if I was doing this ultimately, I'd do it 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 different platforms that have obviously got different machine learning bias within them. So I get this lovely rounded end result. Now, of course, if I had, ultimate time, I probably would do that. But for me right now, just doing it the once is a surefire way of actually building confidence that what I'm using is reliable. And of course, in the not too distant future, we'll probably be building agents who will automatically do this fact checking across a number of platforms too, so that you can then start to non-bias with the machine learning that each one has done. So fact check the output, don't copy and paste. These content generators, particularly like ChatGPT, can produce very confident but inaccurate statements. We call it hallucination, AI hallucination. You've probably already encountered that, if not heard about it. So always do your verification and build a habit of doing this cross-referencing, against reputable databases, against your brand guidelines or any official kind of documentation. Trust, credibility, and your professionalism is also going to be based on this and depending upon it. So it is very, very important to do. So the key takeaways as we've been trying to uncover this concept of machine learning, what it is in its 3 forms, hopefully you know those now, supervised, unsupervised, and the deep learning that it's doing to become a bit more intuitive and a little more human-like, is that it is helping us as marketers to uncover patterns, predict outcomes, and generally personalize with our customer experiences at scale. So if we can understand and just be very mindful of those 3 core types of learning and start to train, start to teach, start to guide our AIs that we're using in these different ways, then we can watch and be very, very mindful of the outputs that we're giving. This is best practice right now from what I'm seeing, but we need to stay critical. We need to be not in a negative way, but we need to be very aware of where we might be biasing the AI inputs, the learning, and then the way we interpret the outputs. So whenever we interpret any kind of AI interaction, just be very mindful that we're going to try and remove judgment. We're going to try and remove the kind of assumptions that we often have used to kind of get to where we are in our professional life and also in our personal life. And we're going to try as best we can. We're human, of course, we're not going to be perfect, nor is the AI, but we're going to try and do this to our best endeavors. And then, as I've said just a moment ago, we're always going to fact check AI generated content to maintain accuracy and brand credibility wherever we can. And so approach machine learning in the way that we're talking about this, the way that we're getting into this relationship where it's parent-child, whether it's manager-assistant, however we want to be using our AIs, but make sure this is being used as a strategic assistant and not a decision maker. And in that way, you'll continue to demystify what is, to be fair, almost, I would say right across every different sector is often confusing for many people. But hopefully now we've demystified this whole concept of how AIs are learning, how AIs are best to be communicated with and through. And so we're going to become much more effective marketers going forward if we can continue to develop habits that really help our machines to learn better into the future. I hope you found this useful. I hope this has given you a lot of things to think about in terms of the way that you build your relationships with your AI tools going forward. So good luck, and I will look forward to hearing and observing, obviously, if we are connected, how you're getting on with this. So please do share and share wide your experiences here, because we're all learning as a humanity, and it's down to us as individuals to really share any good practice that we see in our travels. So good luck and enjoy your next encounter with your favorite AI.